Okay, if we want to come on in, grab a seat, we're going to go ahead and get started. I think usually I would give 5 minutes of grace time, but I think we have enough material this week where we probably ought to go ahead and get started. If I'm wrong, you get to be done early, win-win. So we will go ahead and get started today with today's class. All right. So we're talking about ethics and morals. Where do you get those from? Last week we talked about virtue, ethics. We talked about just having it be the kind of person that you are. So for some people, there are certain things that come naturally. So there's an ethic out there that, well, some people just are the way they are, and that's the way they are. That's how they carry on their ethics. We talked about Honest Abe and how for him it was just something that he did. It was just second nature to him. It was just something that he did to be honest, to tell the truth. That was his makeup. That's what everybody around him said was something that stood out about him. And so that is what virtue ethics is. We talked about how it's not about so much about what you do, but about who you are. But we looked at how virtue ethics is great for day-to-day moral decisions, but it's not so great when it comes to an ethical dilemma, to something where you're not sure what the answer is. So we talked about what an ethical dilemma is when you honestly do not know the correct answer. So you have a set of morals that you hold before you, but you still don't know quite the correct answer in a situation. We also talked about where do you get your ethics, your morals from? Parents, grandparents, your peers, might come from media, from your country, from somewhere deep inside of you. Does it come from God? Does it change? And so regardless of where it comes from, in order to be better equipped, we need to discuss how we make ethical decisions. And to do this, we should have a group of principles to guide us, and that's what we're going to start talking about this week. Okay, so this week, as always, we begin our class here with a game of two truths and a lie. So there will be one of these things that is a lie and two of them that are truths. Okay, so this week's game of two truths and a lie is brought to you by Ranker.com. And again, two of these things are true, one is not. So guess which one is the lie. All right, which of these are not in the list of top 10 board games? Top 10 board games. Is it Scrabble? Is it Monopoly? Or is it chess? Okay, list of top 10 board games. Scrabble, Monopoly, or chess. How many think that Scrabble is the lie, not in the top 10? Okay, how many think Monopoly is not in the top 10? And how many think that chess is not in the top 10? All right, so the answer is chess is number 4, Scrabble's number 9, Monopoly is number 21 on the list. Which is kind of surprising because I think everybody in America has Monopoly in their house. All right. Nick cannot answer this one. Do not look at him. Which of these are not in the secret menu of Starbucks drinks? Which of these are not in the secret menu of Starbucks drinks? Is it cotton candy Frappuccino? Is it a unicorn Frappuccino? Or is it a Tootsie Roll Frappuccino? All right. So which of those is not in the secret menu of Starbucks drinks? How many think it's cotton candy Frappuccino? How many think it's a unicorn Frappuccino? And how many think it's Tootsie Roll Frappuccino? All right. I made up Tootsie Roll Frappuccino. Is that a thing? No. It could be. Okay. Franklin's got one now. Okay, all right, okay, he'll make it for me. All right, which of these are not in the list of famous people that had a major career change? So famous people that had a major career change. All right, is it Shirley Temple? Is it John Wayne? Or is it Bob Ross, the happy tree guy, okay? Two of those people had a major career change. One did not. So is it Shirley Temple, John Wayne, or Bob Ross? How many think it's Shirley Temple is the one that did not have a major career change? How many think John Wayne did not have a major career change? How many think Bob Ross did not have? Okay. So Shirley Temple was an actress early in life, but later became an ambassador to Ghana and Czechoslovakia in her adult life. Bob Ross went from being Master Sergeant in the Air Force yelling at people to painting happy trees for everybody. And John Wayne is the lie. He acted in movies from 1926 through 1976. Was always an actor in his adult life. That's where he started. Actually, if you're an Old West fan, there's a guy named Tom Mix that was good friends with Wyatt Earp that got tickets to a UCLA game, which is where John Wayne played, and then he invited him onto the movie set, and the rest was history. So that was kind of a cool story. All right, which of these are not on the list of weird things that used to be on McDonald's menu? Which of these are not on the list of weird things that used to be on the McDonald's menu? Is it McDonald's McPizza? Is it McDonald's McLobster? Or is it McDonald's McSpam? All right. How many of you think that the lie is the McPizza? How many of you think the lie is the McLobster? And how many of you think the lie is the McSpam? Okay, so the pizza was in the 80s and 90s, but they could never make it quicker than 11 minutes per pizza, which was too slow for McDonald's, so that was gone. The McLobster is a huge lobster sandwich, and that was true, but they couldn't source enough lobster for the whole country, so they had to axe that one. So the lie here is the McSpam, but hey, let's bring it back, right? Let's see what happens. All right, which of these is not on the top 10 list of if you could only eat one food the rest of your life? So which of these is not listed in the top 10 of if you could only eat one food the rest of your life? Is it a cheeseburger? Is it nachos? Or is it ice cream? Cheeseburger, nachos, or ice cream. So which one of those is the lie in top 10 list of one food you could eat the rest of your life? How many think it's cheeseburger is the lie? People would not eat cheeseburger the rest of their life. How many think nachos is the lie? How many think ice cream is the lie? That's awesome. I'm such a good liar. I got you guys good. Ice cream is the lie. It came in at number 12, cheeseburger at number 2, and nachos at number 10. So ice cream did not make the top 10 list. If my father-in-law was here, he would have guessed ice cream as well. All right. So again, I do that to illustrate how quickly lies can be propagated, how quickly lies can be spread, and with how little thought they can be spread. So let's get into how we can better be prepared to make ethical decisions. In order to do this, we need a framework. We can't go from situation to situation, making up our minds spontaneously. Spur of the moment is not great for having a huge ethical dilemma hit you and then say, now I need to make a choice, a major choice that will affect me and the rest of my family forever and ever, and I'm going to make it right at this second. It's better that we have a framework that we can kind of base our decisions on and think about these things. The Bible says we should not be tossed back and forth by the waves, blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. That's from Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 14. So instead of being blown around by different ways of ethics and thinking about morality, let's see what God has to say and let's stick with that. Why do we have to listen to all of these different things and say, well, there's different things we should do. We need to be very careful about all the greatest and latest ideas and look at what God has to say about truth. So, Most of us probably had some kind of framework when we were growing up. Our parents probably had some wisdom for us. So I want to take a moment and ask you, what are some things your parents said to you, some nuggets of wisdom that helped you start a moral framework for yourself? So what are some things that your parents said growing up that kind of helped you start to make right and wrong decisions? What's right and what's wrong? What kinds of things did your parents share with you? Okay, awesome. Character is what you do when no one else is looking. Very good. So that's a great life lesson. It's not just when people are looking at you, okay? Good. Others? Anything else? We don't remember a thing our parents taught us, do we? Okay, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And what's that teaching us? That's teaching us a work ethic, right? That's teaching us to give it our best. We don't just do something and not care about it. We want to actually put some thought, put some work into it. Good. Others? Yes? Hard work pays off, okay? Again, with the work ethic, if we work hard at something, it's going to pay off for us. Good. Yes? Okay. All right. There could be another phrase for that. In this house, I am God. No, all right, my house, my rules, which means you can't make the rules here. We have a set of rules that we're abiding by. So that's a framework, right, of how we're going to do things in our home. Good. Yes? Yeah, what was Jesus Okay. Okay, yeah, very good. What would Jesus do if Jesus was here? What's he going to do? Okay, great question. Yes?
This is an example after the fact. I visited him every morning at 9 o'clock at coffee time. He wasn't drink coffee in the nursing home. He's visibly upset. I said, what's the trouble? He said, it's 9 o'clock and I haven't done anything constructive yet. Now that was an example he gave me, and that was what showed it.
Okay. So yeah, I haven't done anything constructive with my day yet. Don't waste your time, okay? Make sure that your time is worth it, that you're spending it on something worthwhile. Great, awesome, yes? Treat others the way that you want to be treated. Very good, okay? So you need to treat others in the way that you want them to treat you. We don't just do something not thinking about. We need to think about, what if that was me in their shoes? Put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel? Treat others the way that you want to be treated. Awesome. So there's lots of things that our parents give to us to start us out with a moral framework. And so you'll notice that today's principles have to do with respect for others. We're going to look at 4 principles today that we're going to start to build a framework that will help us be able to make these moral, these ethical decisions. And so this has to do with respect for others. And respect is an interesting word because we might think of it in different ways. Now, since I can't say it any better than Randy Harris wrote it, let me just read a small portion, a couple of paragraphs here from his book Life Work, in which he describes the difference of talking about respect for people, respect for persons. So he says, if I can get to it here, that, maybe I'm on the wrong page. There we go. So let me first address what it means to respect a person. There are 2 different kinds of respect I can give you. One kind of respect I can give you is based on your achievements. You may have achieved something superb in sports or in music or in academics, and I respect your accomplishments. The other kind of respect I can give you is based simply on your being a creature in the image and likeness of God. And I give that respect to every human being. That's the kind of respect I'm going to talk about. It's important not to get these 2 types confused. So remember, this is a teacher, a professor, and he says, it's really interesting when I get my teacher evaluations back. So I've got this D- student who writes, you didn't teach me anything. And I'm thinking, I told you that first. That's why that grade's on your paper. That's one thing we agree on. That D- student deserves the same respect for being created in the image and likeness of God as the A student does. They deserve exactly the same amount and the same kind of respect. That's hard because we're trained in a culture to believe that the only kind of respect that matters is the respect that you get because of certain achievements. And by the way, those achievements have a lot less to do with you than you think they do anyway. So, interesting thoughts about respect. What does respect mean? And so the respect we're going to be looking at is based upon the respect of other people that are formed in the image of and likeness of God, and that's the respect we're going to give as we begin to build our framework for ethics. So, since we can't be perfect, let's at least work on creating some principles to have a minimally decent ethic, all right? So if we go out there and just have any conversation with anybody, regardless if they have faith or not, let's have these conversations and build a framework for at least a minimally decent ethic. So, principle number one that we want to look at in our system of building up ethics is do no harm. Do no harm. Non-malfeasance, okay? The idea that we are not to harm another human being. Now, this is a pretty universal one. Wherever you go in the world, there is something to be said for not harming another person. All the countries have laws, some kind of law in place about not harming another human being. In fact, we think to the very beginning of the Bible. What are some of the first sins that we see? What's the first one? Obviously, is what? Okay, well, before murder, there was the lying to God thing, right? Okay, so there's lying to God, but then there's a murder, all right? Chapter 3, there's the fall of man. Chapter 4 is the first murder, and it was between the first two brothers, all right? And so we see murder at the very beginning of the Bible, and God saying, what have you done? And so we see that at the very beginning that killing another human is there. Now, in fact, if you think about it, aren't several of the 10 Commandments based on this ethical principle? Do not harm another person. Whether it's physically or another way, financially, whatever it is, we might have things like do not kill, do not steal, do not lie. Okay, so in our 10 Commandments, we have those things which are connected to not harming another person. I'm not harming their reputation, their feelings. I'm not harming them physically. And so do no harm. Now, when we consider the do no harm principle, where do we start to go off the wagon? Where do we start to mess up? So let's talk about that. Because we could probably convince ourselves that certain things we do won't hurt other people very much, right? So when we think of not harming others, where do we start to kind of try to find loopholes and get away? Do what? If it's family. Okay. So we'll justify it somehow. Maybe one of those is that their family, maybe there's something that we want, that they've said or whatever, that we have something in our family that is our justification for harming them. Okay? Yes?
It's based on self. Not worried about how it's going to affect anybody else, but it's going to.
Okay, great. Awesome. So I'm just going to hurt other people because I'm worried about me. And it doesn't matter what hurts you, I'm more worried about me. So this is someone who doesn't follow this ethical principle very well, right? They may have not been taught it's not about you. They need to be taught and to help understand this life is about helping each other, but they may not have that at all and just make all their decisions based on me, me, me. Very good. Yes, Jeff?
It's easy to harm other people when you don't see these people.
Okay. So if we don't see people, maybe we don't know. So what could be some examples of that? Not including them. So maybe they're not in your friend group. Others? If I skip work one day, what's going to happen? Is someone else not going to have to pick up my workload? So am I not adding something on to someone else's load by my choosing to be negligent in doing my job, or at least showing up to my job, right? I'm talking about a minimally decent ethic here. You understand what I'm saying? So if I decide to skip work one day, somebody else is going to have to pick up that workload. Now, for some people that's worse. For some people that's worse than others. It could be a server doesn't show up and someone gets cold called out of hanging out with family, or they have some other appointment that we really need somebody to show up. Can you come in? So somebody might be just as busy, if not busier than you, and then they get called in to come cover your work. We talk ourselves into almost anything. Lying. It's just a little lie. It's not really going to hurt that much. Stealing. Okay, we can talk ourselves into stealing, and I'm not talking like break and enter and grab something. I'm talking, my workplace isn't really going to miss this. Okay, so we have little ways of talking ourselves into non-harm. Okay. Now, what about if I throw us a moral dilemma here? Your child comes home from school with a black eye, and we find out that the school bully is the one who did it. What do we tell our child? What do we tell our child? Now, I really want to hear what you say, because I've bounced back and forth on this one. I really have. And I can say for me, this is a moral dilemma. I struggle with what the right answer is here. Yes? Okay. Don't start it, but don't be afraid to finish it. So we're going to stand up for ourselves. We're going to take the person down. Okay, kill him with kindness, another one has said. Very good. Yes, was there one back here? Okay, so let's have an exchange with the other family. Let's talk about this. Let's see what we can do to talk it out. Yes.
From personal experience, once you confront a bully, they usually start leaving you alone.
Okay. So this is a moral dilemma for me, because at sometimes I've thought, my kids need to stand up for themselves and they need to confront this, right? Bullies need to be confronted. I think about there was a guy at a church when we were in Oklahoma that he ended up moving away. He was a blind guy that was an ex-Navy SEAL. And they moved, I think, to Oklahoma City, had a brother of the wife, got super high on drugs, broke into the house and had a gun. He ended up shooting his own sister and mother who were in the home. The Navy SEAL heard about it. He heard it. He was in the other room. He made his way into the room, heard the gun jam, and proceeded to disarm the guy and beat the tar out of him. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, Navy SEAL. And then I have to really think about the darkness that's inside of me. We think about, what do we do with evil? What do we do with Jesus' words in Matthew 5? You've heard that it was said, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. Now again, I struggle with this one. I don't want my children to be hurt, right? And so I start thinking about all these things. I think, so if we're not to hurt others, I'm just supposed to allow my child to be the one that's hurt? This is love, not that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. 1 John chapter 4, verse 10. So wait a minute. So my child is just supposed to sit back and say nothing and do nothing. He was led like a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Acts chapter 8, verse 32. You remember how we've been saying that doing the right thing does not always bring happiness? It might not always be easy, but what is the right thing? Now, let's be honest, and I'll start. I don't even teach my children the minimal thing that this scripture teaches in this passage. Let's put aside turn the other cheek for just a moment, okay? Let's just put that aside, turn the other cheek and all of that. What about love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you? Do we even do that? Why is our answer not when the kid comes home and says, look at what happened, and we find out, why is our answer not, you know what, let's sit down and let's pray for that kid? I'm not saying that. I'm there. That's me. I'm preaching to me. Yes. Yes. Yes.
My first comment might be, you think this is the way Jesus would handle this?
Yes.
What do you think Jesus might do?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking about not just your children, I'm talking about adults.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Great question to ask, isn't it? What would Jesus do? What would Jesus say? What would Jesus' reaction be in this situation? Yes. Sure. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, like I said, even if we put aside turn the other cheek and just sit there and take it or whatever, even if we put that aside, what's the minimal thing we can do? Let's pray for the other person. But yeah, running away, all of this stuff. So do no harm is an interesting ethic that we need to start thinking about.
When I had a situation, my oldest son,
Yeah.
sorry, when he was in high school. Oh, wait, not when, I'm going to punch you in the face. And my son pulls this, he goes, hold on, let me take my glasses off. And I said, ah, and he came home, I don't think he had got somebody that don't do that, he doesn't even want to fight you. And I said, Anthony, don't do that. Don't stand there and let somebody hit you like that. You know,
Yeah.
walk away. But anyway, he was ready just to take his glasses off and let somebody hit him.
Yeah. 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 And that is not a fun thought for any parent, right? And again, I want to reiterate what I'm saying here today is not an easy thing, and I don't want to put down the thought of the feelings that parents have when their children are hurt, because we don't like it at all. But what can we do to start building into our children the thought of what is right and wrong, and also helping them see how much evil there is in the world? Why would some kid come up and just do this randomly, without provocation? Why in the world would anyone do that? And so there's a lot to think about in the evilness that's in our world and how we can do that. Now, I think about, again, Jesus being able to, and I try to tell my children a couple of different things. I have told them before, finish it. Okay? I've told them that. I've also told them it takes more strength for you to walk away from a fight, or for you to, if they do hit you, for you to still not retaliate. That takes more strength than that coward did hitting you. Because I want them to know that person is wrong. That is wrong. And I want my kids to know, if I ever catch you going up and punching some other kid in the face unprovoked, you're going to be in huge trouble. Because that's not what we do. We do not harm other people. So do no harm. Number 2, do good. Do good. Beneficence, all right? Now, this one needs a little more definition, because if you were required to stop and do good at every opportunity, what would you ever get done in life, right? If I say, let one of your principles be do good, okay. So you wake up, you start your day, and what happens? When is your first opportunity to do good? Probably 2 minutes after you wake up, right? So, oh, you know what? I'm going to serve you. You're never going to get through your day, right? So let's define this a little bit more. What does do good mean? Philosophically, the notion of doing good is based on 2 things: the cost to me and the benefit to the other person, all right? The cost to me and the benefit to the other person. Now, I vaguely remember scenes from Air Florida Flight 90 that took off from Washington, D.C., January 13th, 1982, and it clipped a bridge going over the Potomac River. It went down and into the icy waters of the Potomac. They had a helicopter that was putting down a line trying to pull people out of the water. There were 74 passengers. Only 4 were rescued. But there was a man that they caught on camera that kept taking the thing, and he was swimming, and he would hand it to another person before he eventually drowned. Was he morally obligated to do that? Was he morally obligated to help people? Now, let's give another scenario. You're walking by a babbling brook that's only maybe 1 or 2 feet deep. There's a toddler that's doing their toddling thing down by the brook, and they manage to fall face down, and then they manage to do the thing where they can't roll over. So they're sitting there face down in this brook. You look down and you have on some new leather shoes. Are you morally responsible for pulling this kid out? Now, what's the difference between the 2 situations? Now, both of them, the benefit to the other person is high, right? Okay? So the benefit to the other person is you save their life, whether you're the guy that's handing off the rope for the people they pulled out, or you're the person who goes, my shoes are going to get wet, you get in, you get the kid, you take him out. Now, what's the difference? The difference is the cost to me in the babbling brook scenario is very low. In the other scenario, the cost to me is very, very high. So the minimal thing we can do to be decent people in doing good is, if the cost to you is fairly low, but a benefit to someone else is pretty good, we should do it. That should be something that we do. Do good. Take the time to do good. If it's a low cost to you and a high benefit to someone else, then take the time to do good. So we think about all of this stuff, and we've got to think about what's the benefit. If it just takes me a little bit of time to help someone out, that's not a whole lot of time. Now, who remembers the good old days where we all were taught to hold open a door, or to help the old lady across the street, or whatever? Again, those are things that don't cost us a lot, but they benefit the other person quite a bit. Okay. Christians are taught a little bit more, though, aren't we, in the realm of doing good. So we have verses, for example, like 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 13. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Actually, that's Galatians 6:9. 2 Thessalonians 3:13 says, "As for you, brothers and sisters, never tire of doing what is good." Or, "Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us." From 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12. "For it is better if," now here's where it gets hard. "It is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil." This is where the cost-benefit goes a little higher for Christians. The Bible tells us we don't necessarily do a cost analysis. Now remember, what I'm saying is let's have these conversations with people that don't have faith and say, can you at least take a moment to do something nice for somebody if it's of low cost to you? Wouldn't the world be a better place if at least people started to think about other people? This can benefit them if I just do one thing kind today. The Bible tells us, yes.
Just as number one, do no harm, isn't that a part of the Hippocratic Oath? Isn't doing good also a part of the Nebraska Good Samaritan law?
There are Good Samaritan laws, yes, where
Each one of them are a part of another, so this is just discernment. So this situation.
it should be discernment, yes.
To a whole bunch of other situations that are similar.
Yeah. It totally should be. You're right. And there are Good Samaritan laws. There's the whole, if anybody watched Seinfeld, the whole last episode of Seinfeld was they watch a guy get mugged and they kind of just make fun of the situation while it happens. And a cop comes in and says, what were you doing? You were just sitting there mocking the guy, and they throw them in jail. It wasn't funny, but it was a brilliant commentary on society and on the way things are sometimes. But yes, we would like to think that it's discernment. But this is, again, where I think Christians can lead the way and say, let's do good. Yes?
I think we can't underestimate in both points 1 and 2 what parents do, how that can affect your children and their growth in the Lord.
Absolutely.
I've been in situations where people come to my house with their children, in times when I need it. I love them. I think that, those children are learning how to walk the walk. They're learning how to put their faith in action.
Absolutely.
Seeing you do the same. And that applies to your first point as well as your second point.
Absolutely.
There's a way for our kids to learn than to see us doing right thing.
Absolutely. How do we teach this? And we're going to get to this a little bit more in a class coming up, but how do we teach this? We model it. We do no harm, we do good. We stop to do good. Your kids are going to learn whenever you're driving down the road and you see someone with a flat tire and you pull over, that's a lesson. That's an opportunity for them to learn. Whenever someone says something that's not kind about you and you choose to not retaliate, that's a lesson for them. So all of these things, you're right, are absolutely taught by our parents. So do no harm, do good. Number 3 is tell the truth. So let me ask this. Are all lies created equal? Are all lies created equal?
So what you're saying is a lie, a lie, a lie, a lie.
Is a lie a lie, a lie, a lie? Okay, now, we've mentioned before, you have neighbors that are Jewish. You hide them in your house. The Nazis come knock on your door and say, do you have Jewish people in your home? Is a lie, a lie, a lie, a lie? So
I always say, yes, a lie is a lie, and then I don't know what I would do in that situation.
okay, moral dilemma.
And then I read Something Boo, and it happened to them where there was a family or whatever, and they were coming to get, the young men so they could be part of the war or whatever, so it wasn't a Jewish thing. Anyway, they put them underneath the table, under the ground, and then they had like a rug and then a table on top, and so the soldiers came in and said, hey, where are your young men? We're going to take them. And the daughter said, they're under the table, and then burst out laughing because she couldn't believe that she said that because she didn't know what to do. They thought she was nuts, and they laughed. And so Corey Ten Boom was like, look at what she did. She didn't lie, and yet God still protected them. And so
Sure.
I don't know what the right answer is.
Sure, sure. And yet there are probably also answers where people told the truth and they drug the Jewish people out. And what happened? Yeah, so what do you do with that moral dilemma? That's a tough one. Yes?
Isn't the biggest lie a half-truth?
Okay.
Not lie
Okay.
immediately?
Yeah. Okay.
I think that, in other words, a half-truth is a bigger lie, or is that what I'm thinking? But
Okay.
so that's a bigger lie than if you just out tell a blatant lie.
Sure. Yep. A half truth. So there are different kinds of lies in that when we think about what's the purpose of the lie, right? There are lies that are meant to hurt other people. Okay? There are lies that are meant to protect me. Did you do this? No. And there are lies to protect other people. I don't have Jewish people in my home. Okay? So there are different lies, right? There are different kinds of lies when we start thinking about this. So what do we do when someone's newborn baby is shown to us for the first time and they look a little bit like Yoda from Star Wars? And they say, "Isn't she cute?" Yes, she's out of this world. Okay, what do we say? Do we lie? Do we tell the truth? I think their face is really scrunched up and looks, a little bit like a bulldog, to be honest with you. I mean, what do we do? So there are different lies that we think about that come out. This is where we must decide that another principle might trump not lying, right? So going back to our principle of our Jewish neighbors that are hiding, which principle is going to trump? Is it do no harm, or is it do not lie? See, this is where building a framework can help us. Because in this situation, do no harm, I know that if I tell the truth, these people will die. Do no harm. So in this situation, perhaps for me, I'm going to have that trump. And I'm going to say, this is important. Now, there are other situations where do not lie. For example, we try to tell our children, if you have broken something, come and tell us, because we would rather you come and tell us the truth than to find out later that you broke it and lied to us. In other words, you breaking one of my things doesn't hurt as much as you not telling me the truth. So we want to teach our children, we hold this in a high priority. So again, which of these principles will trump each other? And that helps us make these ethical decisions when we start to think about that. All right, we're out of time. I still had one principle to go, but we'll end there with our first three. So do no harm, do good, and tell the truth. So we're going to talk about some more next week, some more principles that we can use to help build our moral framework. Thanks for your discussion this morning.